And today we've got a very special guest for you. We've brought Sandra Taylor, who is the independent candidate for Hale Barns ward. Welcome, Sandra. Thank you for coming in on a Sunday evening. It's very good of you.
Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. As you say, I'm the independent candidate for Hale Barns ward. I've been very active in the local area, doing my bit for the community, and so I wanted to put my name forward to stand for the elections this year. So thank you very much for coming along and giving me the chance to speak about some of my policies and thoughts today.
Well, we've got loads of questions for you because I want to know about you becoming an independent and living with a Liberal. Oh, my goodness me. And the whole gamut of the things that are your philosophy. So but don't go anywhere. We have Sandra Taylor, who is the independent candidate for Hale Barns ward. So, Sandra, first of all, being an independent, I'm just wondering, tell us a little bit about your journey and why being an independent candidate matters so much for you.
Hi, Susan. Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think probably my journey, if you like, goes back to I was trying to help my local community with this local park. It's only a small park in the Wellgreen area for people that know it. And it got really run down and quite neglected.
So that's
Wellfield Lane Park, it's called.
Park,
yes.
yeah.
Just off Grove Lane, so it's just not too far from Delahayes Road. And it got quite neglected, really. But it was still popular. There were quite a lot of, as well as children in the area, there was quite a lot of older people. And there was a lady in particular, had a little dog, and she took the dog to the park, but there was no bench for her to sit in when she got there, apart from in the children's play area, and it was causing friction in the community. And
because of the dog and
the dog shouldn't be in.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll try and help. So that's kind of how the park group got started and set up, and we leafleted the whole area, and there was lots of interest, and people did.
But was there not? I mean, I would wonder if there was not another party that would be equally active and equally engaging for you to think, okay, I can be part of them and attach to them. I mean, why be an independent?
I think particularly the community activities like park groups, they work best outside of local politics, in my view. So my group, I don't mind what party people are from. Everybody's welcome to get involved. We've got Labour people, Conservative people, Green people. I don't mind. You know, everyone.
And you actually do live with a Liberal, don't you?
I do live with a Liberal, yes.
And I would imagine he would be quite enthusiastic and motivated to help you.
We're both, I think it's fair to say, quite strong personalities. So
I hear.
Work best when
you
Neil does his thing and I do my thing, and that seems to work best for us. So
but I
support him.
Do you find that there are? I mean, the reason you're an independent, do you find that there's certain things you agree with in one party and then you don't agree with them on certain things and then you agree perhaps with another party? Is it that your views are very disparate?
I mean, going a long time back before I got involved in any active politics, I was traditionally just a plod along, if you like, Labour voter. So that's kind of my background. But then there are other aspects that, you know, especially as I've matured, I guess, that I think, well, actually, you know,
they don't sit quite not well with
everything.
you.
I mean, some aspects are important. Obviously, the social, the caring side, looking after people that are vulnerable, all of that. But then the money still has to come from somewhere.
Well, that's been my theme.
The question to me is, well, that's great, but where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, it's great coming on here and saying we want to do this and save the world and build houses and have fantastic groups. And then you think, well, hang on, and abolish the green bin tax and stuff. But where, you know, there's a shortfall then, isn't there?
Yeah, and then on the other extreme, you know, traditional Conservatives, where they'd be like, well, no, we can't spend anything. And then people are suffering unnecessarily, and that's not right either. So I guess I'm kind of in the middle in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that. So at the elections on Thursday, and we always say, however you choose to vote, just remember to use it, because that's so important to use that vote next Thursday. So, Sandra, as an independent candidate for the Hale Barns ward, what are the particular things that you are impassioned about?
Thanks, Susan. I mean, I'm going to give a fairly long list, if that's okay, and then maybe we can come back to some of the issues.
I shall make notes of the ones that particularly trigger me.
Yeah, so I think probably it's fair to say across Trafford, really, but housing is a big concern for a lot of people at the moment. Homelessness, universal
Do you have much
credit,
homelessness
food
in Hale
banks. It's surprisingly some, yeah.
You do have some homelessness in Hale Barns, okay.
Well, quite where they're coming from all the time, but yeah, you do see people sleeping rough occasionally.
Okay.
Things,
and food banks, a need for food banks? Do you have residents who are in need of food bank support?
In part, for those that don't know Hale Barns ward, it's a very diverse, disparate ward. You've got everything from millionaire houses right down to touching on here on the Broomwood. So it's quite,
it's quite diverse in terms of coverage,
it's
isn't it?
Quite maybe what you think always. So there are some quite more deprived areas. Again, linking to that, there's nothing really for children. Like there's no youth centres or activities, particularly for younger people, particularly people with mental health needs have told me that they could do with a bit more support and provision locally. Then, it's a crime. I mean, you may not be surprised, but I mean, people suffering with break-ins and all the rest. You'll be aware of the stabbing that happened quite recently in Hale Barns, still quite concerning. And I think the other really big burning issue at the moment is...
I think that particular stabbing shocked everybody across Trafford, didn't it?
Oh, it was horrific, yeah. I mean,
it was like, just, not, the fact that it happened in daylight, the fact that there were young boys from a decent school, the whole story behind it, the whole backstory was horrendous, and it really brought it home how much support is needed in different areas for a myriad of different things to avoid that happening, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really concerning. I mean, when I first got involved locally, with the park group that I worked with them for other reasons, we were working regularly with the local PCSOs who were always out and about.
And they're the police community service officers, aren't they?
Police community service officers.
Who are the volunteers.
Yeah, but it was really nice to have that local presence, and they'd helped me with a few issues locally at the time, but all of that service was cut back so much now. I think the community is suffering for that lack of presence now.
Do you find it makes a difference, even if the volunteers in uniform? Does it make a difference?
Yeah. I mean, I had a case. An older lady was feeling a bit threatened by. I mean, I don't think they were particularly bad youngsters, but they were boisterous. But anyway, she felt a bit.
Can be a bit intimidating, can't it?
And they were bouncing the ball against her side of her house and things. And anyway, but the PCSO went over, had a chat with them, and it was all sorted out.
And that's not something you would call the police about, is it? It's just having somebody there who's
that reassurance.
Who is the independent candidate for Hale Barns ward. So, Sandra, you feel especially passionate, don't you, about Greenbelt land? Tell us more.
Yes, I do, Susan. As you're possibly aware, but for listeners that may not be aware, there's currently been 2 rounds of consultation around the Greater Manchester area Spatial Framework proposals. And in Trafford in particular, that largely affects 2 quite big areas. There's a big area in Carrington Moss where there's a proposal to build over 6,000 homes. And there's a proposal to build 2,400 homes and some commercial space on an area called Timperley Wedge. For those who don't know the area well, both Carrington Moss and Timperley Wedge have sites of special scientific interest and rare birds and animals and reptiles and all sorts.
And also the thing about Carrington is it absorbs a lot of pollution, doesn't it? Apparently, it's a sink. Called a sink, I think, where it takes all the pollution, a lot of pollution in, and absorbs it. So we need to keep that.
But the additional stresses we've got with the Timperley Wedge story is that you've got the airport really close by. You've had massive development already on the Manchester side. It's really the last bit of green area, the last bit of depolluting area, if you like, and you've also got Withenshaw Hospital really close to all this as well. And I'm concerned if the air quality goes down when we lose that bridge of protection, apart from losing the diverse wildlife and species and a beautiful habitat. And I appreciate we're so privileged to live close to this beautiful area. And I do appreciate that homes are badly needed for local residents. I do understand that. But I do feel we need to look really hard at other potential brownfield sites that could be done, rather than taking away.
Have you got any in mind, though? I mean, when we talk about being... I mean, I see, just as a lay person walking around, driving around, I see an awful lot of houses being built. There seems to be construction going on all over the place.
Yeah.
So are we still short of houses?
If I could add, that's a really good point. There's another concern with this whole story. So looking across Greater Manchester, the allocation isn't just about Trafford, it's about the allocation across the whole of Greater Manchester. In Trafford, we're disproportionately losing more Greenbelt when we have probably less in other areas as well. And what they've also done, for example, my local park, the golf course, what used to be the old municipal tip over the road, all these areas that were never classified as Greenbelt before, they're now trying to bring these in and say, these are Greenbelt. So on one hand, with my chair of the park hat on, like, it's nice to have the extra protection for this and the allotments next door and other green areas, but we're not providing anything like the diversity and the ancient hedges and you've got very wetland areas that are really rare actually and quite precious.
So could they not be protected?
That, to some extent, but they're not. They're sites of biological interest rather than sites of special scientific interest. It's not got as high a level of protection.
Because you're a biologist by
I'm
profession,
a biologist.
aren't
I am,
you?
yeah, with a strong interest in ecology as well. And the other concern, particularly with Timberley Wedge, is that area floods every year. So why are they building houses right next to an area that floods every year? It's just not even sensible, it seems to me.
So as alternatives, what would you be looking for? Because
so we really need to tackle this Greater Manchester wide. So we're involved with other Greenbelt groups who are trying to protect. It's no good play off one Greenbelt area. We don't want to see Carrington Ross developed at the expense of us.
But at the same time, it can't be nowhere developed either.
Exactly. But what we're doing Greater Manchester wide, all of the groups together, we're looking at what's called a brownfield register.
Okay.
So it's identifying suitable sites. And what you may also not be aware of is to clean up these brownfield sites, we really need central government funding. And there is funding available through a scheme called Homes England. A staggering 80% of that money is spent in London and the South East.
Well, there's
So there's something that needs addressing.
And that needs highlighting, doesn't it, really?
I think it's really important to understand this. So when they talk about relative Greenbelt loss, because they're bringing all these new areas in which are not traditionally Greenbelt, the loss is actually much larger than it seems on paper. And when it talks about brownfield sites, the developers don't like them because it's expensive.
They've got to clean them up before they can use them, haven't they?
And we really need government help with this, I think, and also in terms of the Greenbelt, whether it's Carrington or wherever it is, there's a lot of concerns from residents that if there aren't appropriate shops, schools, hospitals, infrastructure, roads. I mean, part of area, they don't even have sewage pipes. They still have septic tanks. All of this needs to be thought about really carefully.
Yeah, a real serious issues there. Thank you. Some things we're not really aware that we need until we have people in our lives who need them or were affected by them. And I think a couple of things that you're really bothered about are adult and children's social care, aren't they?
Yes, that's right, Susan. I think, as you say, you might think, well, what's this to me? Why should I have to pay for these things? But I think it's one of those things, until you need this support, you don't realise how important it is to people. But I think, to put it in perspective, I think it's quite well publicised now that 1 in 4 people will experience some mental health problems at some stage in their lives. And obviously, many of us have elderly relatives that we're helping to look after and care for, including myself and I believe Susan as well. And, that brings its own issues, and younger people quite often need a little bit of a helping hand to get through maybe a difficult phase or difficult family circumstances and so on. I think it's really vital that
we don't know who we can call on, do we?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think I had a little bit of experience that with myself recently, where I'm trying to get a little bit of extra support from my mum at the moment, who's going blind, and it's it's not been made that easy to find out who you contact, how you get help. And I know the services are so stretched because of the ongoing capping of government funding.
And everybody's getting older. We're living longer, we're fitter, perceptually fitter, but we're becoming a little bit more, dare I say, dilapidated in other ways, the knees and the hips and the mental issues.
Yeah, so a helping hand is needed, definitely, I would say.
And children's care.
And children, again, I think it's quite common, isn't it, for children? I mean, I was a childcare worker when my own daughter was young, so I was quite involved in helping struggling families in Wythenshawe, for example. And you'd be amazed, just that caring place to go, that helping hand. I mean, Sure Start was still active then, and it was a fantastic programme. And I know there was Sure Start here in the Broomwood at the time, and it's really sad to see all that go, because as a little bit of support at the right time can make such a difference to families and help them get over and move on and get back to...
But it's also the associated things, isn't it? Like the lollipop person, or the children's crossing, or the after school clubs, or the before, I think it's 1 in 4 children don't have breakfast when they arrive at school, and those little things like breakfast clubs or the free milk or whatever, these things can make a whole difference to a child's capacity to learn and function, can't they?
They can. I think another thing that's perhaps a little bit poorly understood is, I know there was a bit of almost an outcry, why should all primary age children get free meals? But it's well known, if children socialise and sit together and eat together, then they make new friendships and they'll have a better experience at school.
And they
all
stay
round.
healthier anyway. They're healthier.
It's often the meals provided are much healthier. I mean, my own daughter didn't eat particularly well, but she loved the school meals,
Yeah.
So.
As you say, it's a community thing about relationships and
so
supporting
important.
their mental health too.
Absolutely.
But we're doing a series on here on Trafford Sound, 13th to the 17th, I think it is, of May, is Mental Health Awareness Week. So we will, in the afternoon shows, be covering that. But you're absolutely right. It makes such a difference to people to have the support of some kind there.
And you do feel like sometimes there's a bit of a false economy that we can not spend that money, but we may be making problems further down the line for families.
So you'll be
people and
campaigning for some of these for sure if you get elected next week.
Definitely.
Yeah. And if you're elected next week, talk to me about how you would negotiate on sticky topics with other... I mean, how do you decide who you're going to ally with if you get elected next week?
That's a really interesting question, Susan. So people may or may not be aware, but I'm the wife of Hale Taylor, who was a councillor for 8 years for Timpley Ward.
I believe it's very interesting in your house sometimes.
Some very lively debates at home, yes. we always make up, though, it's fine.
That's all right.
So in terms of Neil's work, I've already built, I think, quite good relationships with a lot of the existing councillors. We meet at regular events and discuss issues, and obviously things like consultation meetings and so on. And
also, I guess it gives you quite a flavour of what's actually going across the borough as well. You're not just Hale Barns, because he's Timperley, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice because it gives us, through home discussions and meetings, that we have a good awareness of what's going out across the borough. In terms of my own local involvement with the park group, obviously I work very well together with the existing Conservative local councillors, so Dylan Butt and Patrick Myers have both been very helpful. And, of course, Bernard Sharp, although he's stepping down this time. So
I suppose the beauty of being an independent is that one time you can say, I agree more with that person, and another time you can agree more with somebody else and ally yourselves with what... And do you do that?
Well, I mean, a good example is the Greenbelt work. So we're obviously working quite closely with both the Lib Dems and with the Green Party councillors on that issue. So, but yeah, it's in a way quite freeing, actually, to be able to just be really quite honest and go, well, yeah, and it's not even just about me; it's about what's important to the residents of Hale Barns.
For sure.
But a lot of people do chat to me and tell me what the concerns are, and it would be really nice to be able to actually formally represent them on the council.
Fabulous. And thank you so much for coming in on a Sunday evening. Really appreciate you doing this. If people want to follow you, if they want to ask you questions, if they want to find out more about what you're up to, Sandra, how do they do that? Have you got social media?
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I only have my own personal Facebook page, but people are welcome to look me up. I'm just down as Sandra Taylor, nothing more fancy than that. On Twitter, I'm not as prolific user as Hale Taylor, my husband, but I do have...
he's on there all the time.
He's on a lot more than me. I'm more of a Facebook person. But I do have at Sandra D_Taylor, if you want to find me there. Or you can email me, sandra@niceplace.co.uk. And if you want to know more about the Greenbelt issues, you can have a look for the Facebook page, Save the Timpley Greenbelt Facebook page. Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming in, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for listening. I will be back with you